Welcome back, everyone. We just wrapped up our second range day with this gun right here. This is the new Ruger RXM, and what is it? Well, basically it's a Gen 3 Glock 19 clone, but it has some additional features and modularity that that gun certainly doesn't have. It's also a good bit cheaper than that gun, and basically what we're going to do here is walk you guys through the firearm itself, what I think of it overall, how it has performed, all of those sorts of things. Before we do that, one thing to note is that it is optics cut, and it takes either RMR, Delta Point, or Shield RMS pattern optics, and it does that by using a series of plugs and then different screw holes, so that way it directly mounts to the actual slide. That's all well and good. I went ahead and mounted this optic up last week and then came out to the range and found an interesting surprise, so let's take a look at that. Just got out to the range with the new Ruger here and ran into an issue. I think I know what it is, but I'm going to show you guys here before I make an attempt to fix it. So we have some 124 grain Minuteman munitions in a Glock magazine, and if we let that go home, that is what is happening right there. That's happened with 4 different types of ammo: Minuteman 124 grain, normal 115 grain, Max Tech 115 grain, full metal jacket, and 147 grain Fiocchi. So what that tells me is it's not an ammo issue. I also tried it with the Magpul mags. The exact same thing is happening. Not sure if you can see what's happening, but what's happening is the extractor will not go around that rim. It just won't. So I'm going to pull the extractor here off camera, because obviously you can't do it on camera, and see what's going on there. So as you can see, we pulled the back plate off, and I have figured out what was wrong with it. It wasn't, in fact, the extractor like I thought. What was actually happening is one of the screws from the optic that we had on there was pushing down on, you guys can see the spring right there that goes through, as well as the extractor plunger, and it looks like it was binding up the extractor plunger with the screw. So apparently the screw I was using was just too long for this particular setup. Very interesting. We've got it all reassembled. I have the same mag that we used earlier, put it in there, same Minute ammunitions, goes right in. That definitely is the issue. When you look in there, I'm not sure if you guys can see it on camera, but it actually is pretty obvious that that hole goes right down into where the extractor plunger is. Very interesting. So obviously we got that sorted out. I went ahead and used a shorter screw on the right side of the optic, and it was absolutely fine from there. So just something to know going forward, don't use a long screw on the right side if you are using an RMR pattern optic like we are here. So with that, let's start here at the mag well like we normally do, and then work our way up for some semblance of order. So it does come with 2 standard capacity Magpul PMags that are 15 rounds. However, of course, like any Glock and Glock clone, you can use any type of fun sticks that you want to. You may have noticed during some of the shooting footage today that we were using 17 and 19 rounders, and obviously it works just fine with those, which certainly is nice. We tried a number of different mags, obviously the Magpuls, factory Glock mags, and then also some X-Tech mags. Gonna try the X-Tech mags, standard capacity. Worked just fine. Taking a look there at our magazine well, you can see it is flared out a little bit over what, say, a Gen 3 Glock would be, both on the sides as well as there on the front. Has a little bit of relief back there on the rear, and it definitely gives you a good funnel for loading magazines. No issues at all with that on my end. The actual grip module itself there, let's talk about that. That is from Magpul. Obviously it has our little Magpul logo down here in the lower right, and it is called their EHG chassis system. And right now, they are available in either gray or black. However, the beauty of a chassis style gun is that there's going to be a ton of different variants for this, I'm sure, both from Magpul and very likely from other companies as well. I have a feeling this is going to be a popular gun. You will probably understand why by the end of this video. But texture is very good all the way around. It's not so aggressive that it is going to irritate your skin, but it's also good enough that I'm not going to complain about it, which is high praise for me. I like aggressive texture, as many of you guys know, and this feels to me very similar to the Magpul K2 grip, if you guys are familiar with that for the AR-15s. Feels very, very similar in that regard. Continuing on up there to our magazine relief, it is cut out and beveled, so that way it's very easy to reach, much easier than it would be on a standard Glock pistol, for example. And then we do have our nice high undercut there on the trigger guard. That is something that a lot of people do to their factory Glocks to allow them to get a little bit higher up than you naturally would be on that Gen 3 frame. One thing that I think is kind of a miss for this gun, not really sure why they did it, but it's not double undercut. So it doesn't have that second undercut there on the trigger guard. Does it matter? Probably not, but it's something they could have done and they didn't do, so it's just interesting to point out. Continuing on up to the slide stop there, it has a slight bit of extension to it over the factory Gen 3 Glock 19. It's not quite as extended as, say, like a Glock 34 would be. We had one failure to lock back, and that was with a factory Glock mag. Now, it absolutely could have been that my hand was hitting it with that high thumbs grip like that. Entirely possible, but out of all the rounds we fired, that was the only time that happened. So for me, that is pretty good. As many of you guys know, on a lot of guns, I do actuate that and cause the slide not to lock back. Only had it happen once, so again, I'm not mad about that at all. Continuing forward there, trigger guard is basically the exact same size as your standard Glock would be. One thing though is that it doesn't have the little hook there that your regular Glock would have, as you guys can see there. And that's going to be the only area where holster compatibility might not be exactly the same, at least with the holsters I've tried. I've tried 4 or 5 of them so far, and they all fit just fine in your standard Glock 19 magazine. Continuing on forward, we do have a 1913 rail there up front, so it is not Glock spec. I know a lot of people will like that. And then they have that little bar right there at the rear that is not present on a regular Glock, and that is for pushing out and then removing the actual chassis system. We're not going to show you how to do that because YouTube would kill us if we did, but just know that is how you do it. It's pretty darn simple. Continuing up to the slide there, it does have good serrations both forward and rear. One thing that I think is important for any gun that is going to be optics cut is to have good forward serrations. A lot of folks like to manipulate their slide via those forward serrations if they have an optic mounted, so that way they don't have to worry about getting their glass dirty. I am not one of those people. However, I know there are a lot of folks out there. The slide itself is nitrided, which certainly is nice, and it has some beveling here that the original Glock, of course, doesn't have as well, both up here at the front of the gun as well as the top of the slide, so that way it's going to be a little bit easier to get in and out of holsters. So we definitely dig that. The barrel itself is 4 inches, cold hammer forged, as you would imagine from the folks at Ruger. And we do have a loaded chamber indicator in there as well, which I dig. The sights on this gun are excellent. They are my preferred setup, if you will, for most situations. Up front there, we have the tritium front sight, and it has good serrations on there. It has a white ring around a green tritium insert. And then back here at the rear, we have a square notch that is serrated. As you can see there on the gun, basically you get a lower 1/4 co-witness with the Holosun here. And the reason they're able to do that without having traditional suppressor height sights is because they mount the optic nice and low. You don't have to have any sort of plate system or anything like that. But I really like the sights, both shooting irons as well as obviously the ability to mount an optic. Now we need to get into the trigger on this guy. We're going to drop our mag. It is empty. Make sure that we are clear. We are. And basically we're going to zoom in here for you guys. I'll step out of the way so you guys can see it. Maybe hold it up so you have a better background. But as you can see on there, it has a flatter profile than what you would get with a regular Glock. And then to actually press it and run through, this is your take up obviously. Then you have your wall, and it breaks way cleaner and way less spongy than a traditional Glock would. It has a good defined wall, and it breaks right at 3.5 to 4 pounds on my scale consistently every time. Let's talk about that reset. It's pretty long. It's very similar to the Glock reset, and it is just as positive as the Glock reset, so I do like that. Put your back on the wall. Man, breaks right at 3.5 pounds, so it is absolutely a better trigger than your traditional Glock would be. I would dare say it's actually better than even the Glock performance trigger, which certainly is nice. It just feels good, nice predictable break, and reset. At this point in the video, we've gone over the details of the gun, but there's still some important stuff to discuss. Before we do that, I want to thank the main channel sponsor, and that of course is Brownells. Basically every single thing you see on this gun, the magazines, the ammo, the optic, the actual firearm itself, as well as any gunsmithing supplies you might need to actually modify it, you can find over there at Brownells. So big thank you to them for sponsoring the channel and making these videos possible. One thing I didn't mention that isn't that big of a deal, but is something I do like on the design, is on this Magpul grip module here. It has a nice beaver tail on there. Some Glocks do give me slide bite. This one absolutely did not. Now, onto the important stuff like reliability and price point. So fired this over the course of 2 days. We're right at 700 rounds at this point, just over. In fact, actually like 703. We've had a grand total of 0 malfunctions of any kind. The vast majority of that ammunition was Minuteman munitions, 124 grain, but we also ran some hollow points through there as well, so let's take a look at that. Now we're going to see it does some hollow points. That's 115 grain S&B from our friends at Firearms Depot. Didn't lock back, and that is with a factory Glock mag. Otherwise, just fine. As y'all saw, it ate those hollow points just fine, so zero issues with reliability at all, provided you're using the right screw on the optic, right? So there is that. But price point on this one, MSRP is going to be $499. Street price is obviously going to be less than that. I'm not sure I can say here on YouTube anymore what the actual prices are. However, if you guys are following me on my non-meta social media and or you're signed up for my email, you already know this thing's coming in at a very sweet price point. And when you compare this to the Glock that it would be compared to, if you will, which is a Gen 4 or Gen 5 MOS, those things are north of $600. This thing is way cheaper than that, at least 2/3 street price. And if you're going to clone something, you either have to do something better or you have to do it just as good but cheaper. And I really think they got some of both with this gun, right? So some of the things are better. The grip absolutely is better. Now, I like Glock grips for sure. I have zero issues with them. That's how I grew up shooting. However, the grip texture on this one, much better than what you would get on a Gen 3. It's better than a Gen 5. And the Gen 5s are fine. I have no problem with that, but it definitely is better. The controls, definitely easier to access than they would be on a Glock. And of course, this one comes with a better optic mounting system. At the end of the day, the MLS system is fine. A lot of people hate it. I don't have a huge problem with it, but not having to have plates and being able to go direct to the slide simply is a stronger system. And of course, they're doing it at a lower price point. Now, one con, if you will, that I would say to the gun is going to be the magazines. Magpul PMags for Glocks, I've had issues with over the years. That said, they've gotten better over the years as well. So the initial ones I had a ton of problems with. These ones we had no issues with at all today, obviously, as you guys have seen. But just know, like, if it was me and I wanted to use this for like a home defense gun or something like that, I would use a factory Glock mag. That's just what I personally would do, but that is my, opinion based on years of shooting the PMags. So there is that. We'll leave it there. And with that, guys, if you like this video and you're not subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button. If you've done that, you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel. There is an algorithm censoring you from my content. Easy way to get around that is to sign up for the email at the website here on your screen. This email will go out every day with a daily deals email, and then also what will happen is a monthly email will be sent out as well to everybody signed up with all of my videos since the previous month's email, so that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. Getting back to the daily deals email, that one goes out every day, typically has 8 of the best deals that we find around the internet. If the item, whatever it is, optic, gun, ammo, magazines, lights, etc., if any of that is in that email, it's the cheapest I know of anywhere for that item on that given day, so that way it saves you guys some time because I've already done the price comparisons for you, and hopefully saves you some money as well. There's also a good meme in there that a lot of people like, and then additionally, it's probably been rolled in on your screen a couple times throughout this video, but make sure you guys are following me on all my social media. If there's any sort of update to the gun, anything like that, because we're going to keep shooting it, I will let you know, and we're going to post the updates over there on my social media. There's also breaking news and all types of other stuff going on over there, so definitely check that out, particularly the non-meta platforms, as we said. And with that, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.